My name is Mark Rabinowitz. I'm the Interim Director of the Tulane School of Architecture Historic Preservation Program, and I'm here to tell you about our program, the information of what we teach and why it's a great program and the process you would need to go through to apply and hopefully join us. So we'll begin. First, the question would be, why study historic preservation? In America, the preservation movement began with the Mount Vernon Ladies Association in 1853. It prepared and created the model by which our preservation movement operated for over 100 years, which was preservation of buildings and sites associated with the founding fathers, primarily in the colonial era. However, in the 1960s, with the destruction of Pennsylvania Station in New York City, a much broader sense of what about our built environment should be preserved was created through the outrage over that destruction. And the National Historic Preservation Act was passed in 1966, starting the movement that we are still working within. It started with a focus on more of the higher, still colonial, but also higher style buildings, but it's expanded to cover the full range of what we see as the many diverse and broad nature of our history in America. So those original efforts were somewhat hampered by the notion that they were seen as elitist or quaint and kind of nostalgic and not necessarily focused on what was a matter to people now, but that's not the case any longer. Our field now is very broad. It covers everything. The law states that anything that's more than 50 years old is potentially can be designated as a historic landmark, but broader than that still is a notion of what constitutes our history. And we now understand that America has many, many threads, many broad and diverse and deep connections with cultures from around the world and America, and that the movement covers all of that and more now. Further, it is becoming not a niche, sort of small sector of the construction industry, but in fact, the majority of the construction industry. For the first time ever, the American Institute for Architects reported that their members did more billing in renovations than in new construction. This is a first in over 20 years of study. That meant that architects who had once almost seen historic preservation as a threat to their goals of building wonderful new buildings now understand that preservation and restoration of their existing building stock is central to their mission. And it's showing up in dollars. The construction industry is a vast part of the American economy, over 7.75% of the entire gross domestic product. That's almost $2 trillion. It's a lot of money. And some of that is available for historic preservation, increasingly as a part of the restoration movement that is becoming ubiquitous. And that means there's a great deal of opportunities for graduates of our program to work in any broad number of parts of this field. It's a growing field. There's a lot of opportunities. You're going to contribute to this important part of our economy, and there is funds to support that. Further, the kinds of things that we've been saying for years are being recognized throughout the industry, which is that the most sustainable building, sustainability, of course, very important to all of us, but the most sustainable building is the one that already exists. The most energy efficient construction exists by reusing existing building stocks rather than tearing them down and creating new one. If you look at the whole scope of what's involved with destruction of existing building stock and building new buildings, it's better to save. And further, and most important, I think, that our cities and the built environment retain the touchstones of our past, and they hold the core of our cultural identity and social cohesion. I think if we didn't have our cities preserved the way they are being, we wouldn't have the rich diversity that constitutes America. And so historic preservation is now and increasingly will be an important part of our economic and cultural well-being. It's proven, it's true, and studying it puts you in the core of that and with a great future ahead of you. So why study in Tulane? It's a 2-year master program in historic preservation. Issues a Master of Science in Historic Preservation, which is on par with all the other top programs in this course of study in the United States. We work within the School of Architecture, in which there are other schools that include the Sustainable Real Estate Development, Public Interest Design, and Landscape Architecture and Engineering. That means you're working in close partnership with those people who you will collaborate with in the field. You're not working in isolation, you're working as a part of the professional breadth that constitutes our work. And you're exposed to the ideas that they will bring, which is different than if you were studying in a standalone program. And Tulane School of Architecture is known for to prepare people of varying backgrounds, ages, and interests in diverse preservation careers. The fact that we're partnering with the Sustainable Real Estate Development Program, I think, is extremely important because that is ultimately where our work is going to flow from. Much of it is not civic and institutional. And policymaking, public administration, urban planning, design, real estate development. There are many, many ways in which what you learn here can be applied. Also, we are in New Orleans. New Orleans is one of America's most historic, vibrant, eclectic cities. An incredible pool of really important historic buildings, all of which need a lot of care because of the environmental conditions of New Orleans, particularly to New Orleans. And it confronts the most compressing issues that our field includes, which are climate, hazard mitigation, social and economic issues, which exist here in the city as well, and the continuity and change in preservation knowledge and planning. People have been preserving New Orleans for quite a long time, actually, but what they do with that preservation, what their goals are in that preservation, like they are throughout the whole industry, have changed. And being part of that continuity lets you learn not only about our past as a field, but our past in the society. There is really strong connection to the local preservation community here, almost all of whom are graduates of this program. So, and they're very, very engaged in trying to contribute to the education and career development of people from the school. So you will meet all the leaders here. They will be your colleagues, they may be your professors, and you'll be very connected with this important part of the culture here because it is seen as, and in fact is, a crucial part of the tourist industry, which is one of the linchpins of the New Orleans economy. Further, it is outward looking. We do international study. We'll take a trip this year with an important preservation architect in Puerto Rico and study sites there. We've had studies in other locations, which I'll talk about later. And a very distinguished faculty that includes some of whom in this room, and lecturers and visiting professors. We make sure that you are exposed to a very deep and broad range of intellectual and practicing preservation professionals. The program is similar to others, and so that it focuses on first training in policy, research, investigation, documentation methodologies, and architectural conservation. There's international travel, summer sessions, which we sponsor, and conservation to work with conservation companies and also to observe and visit sites. And there are grants given for that. There's specialized and applied training that occurs in the second year based on your electives and your area of interest. You'll start to focus in on where you'd like to take this initial study. And we are very much dedicated to ensuring your successful career that comes out of this. This is focused on value. We want you to be well prepared to succeed in this field. And these are some of the areas where you can work that include government planning, zone, and all of these currently have Tulane graduates working in these spheres. Government planning, zoning, compliance, and oversight that goes from the State Historic Preservation Office, the National Park Service, the very large scale, broad, and civic as well. You can work at architectural design and conservation. That's where I work, in private practices. You can work with developers and cultural resource management firms that consult with developers to get tax credits, and advocacy and historic trusts, working, in lobbying for governments to sponsor the preservation of their historic resources, or historic houses and collections management. Many people work in those here in New Orleans and elsewhere. Private practice, as I said, and education. Of course, you can become another teacher in the same field eventually. It's a very hands-on program. We do teach theory, of course, but the theory is derived from exposure to these incredible resources, historic buildings that we have here in New Orleans. And so you'll be visiting these amazing sites, starting with some of the historic cemeteries and going on to houses which are operating as museums and are private institutions that are churches. And you'll see, document, expose, and understand the deterioration and preservation of these materials in this very challenging environment. The documentation will teach you the HABS standards, use of hand sketching and drawing, as well as AutoCAD, and the terminologies of documenting the conditions of historic buildings. Will also teach you how to understand their materials, the material conditions, and the deterioration associated with them, so that there's a sort of, you get a holistic sense of what this constitutes from the physical material side of things. We're also teaching research so that you understand the social component as well. Who built these things? Who lived in them? What was their culture? What did the structures mean in the context of the people who occupied them, and as well as current use, because that is what it dictates its preservation through zoning and advocacy. People who may have historic homes that they may not be able to fully care for or supported through this kind of research and advocacy. And materials, as I said, conservation will understand the kinds of materials that historically have been used in buildings here and elsewhere, what can go wrong with them, why, the mechanisms of deterioration, and the methodologies for testing and observing that, and then restoring them as well. That's my specialty. And then that leads to the thesis and practicum. Will direct you over summer sessions or one of the quarters to work with a professional firm in the areas of your specialty, so you have true exposure to the actual field, and you'll be prepared for that, and it also will usually leads into your potential career. And then there's also a thesis study in which you can concentrate on a particular area and will guide your research for that. And again, we emphasize that the theory, the thesis should be directed towards your area of interest and help in your eventual career as well. And we take a trip, and this spring we'll be going to Puerto Rico, as I said. Last year was Bermuda, previously Curacao. There is a strong attachment and focus on the Gulf and the Caribbean because of our location here in New Orleans, obviously. And so, and there's a tremendous need, and similar building stocks, similar environmental challenges, and really great practicing people that we work with to expose you to this broader range of buildings. This is how the application occurs. There is it's all online. There is a checklist. We'll submit these various things, and Michael Kuzana is here who can help you clarify any of those points if this is not clear, but there are deadlines, obviously, by December 1 if you want early admissions, January 15th regular decision, and if accepted by April 15th, which is a good time for paying taxes also, your tuition would be due. The fees are often subsidized through scholarships. We have a very broad and make full use of all of the funding available to help sponsor and support your education. There are also student loans, assistantships, and we have them working in our studio classes. So we do what we can to make this as painless as possible for them. And so I encourage you to learn more, apply, and ask any questions that we can to help. And we hopefully will then see you next fall in New Orleans. Thank you. Can I take questions, Mark?
Yeah, questions.
Please. Welcome. I'm glad you all made the trek. Where did you come from?
And if you're viewing online, you're also welcome to submit questions in the chat.
So, where did you all come from? Are you far away or local? Local. Good. Excellent. Well, terrific. Good. Well, then I don't have to sell you in New Orleans. You know why you want to be. So, what about the school can be answered?
I feel like I have gotten a very clear
a little bit
rundown.
while we're waiting for other people. I was like, this is good.
Yes, well, this is Heather Naziano, who's the assistant program director and has a sister here, and certainly the person you want to speak to about the actual logistics of this. I'm here on a temporary basis, but she will be here going forward as well. And of course, I'm interested to know why people are interested in studying historic preservation. Because obviously you live in New Orleans, it's kind of hard to avoid, and not, I mean that in a good way, but it also, I feel like it is the field for the future, but many people see it as kind of retrograde and kind of nostalgic, and it's both, but it will increasingly be a valuable and valued part of our industry, and I think it's something we should be ensuring that our students are aware of, that this is a field of the future.
And these are our two current students that I talked about downstairs, so they're here for questions.
Mark, one question I have is, do you have any specific graduate outcomes for students in the program? I know you're in the interim, but any stories you've heard?
Outcomes for them?
As in, what careers have they pursued, or what job opportunities?
So there's a whole area of places that they can work. And like I said, in the New Orleans historic preservation community, everybody is a graduate of this program. So they like New Orleans, so we all do, and they also have the knowledge to be able to contribute. But in my company, Evergreen Architectural Arts, we have 3 graduates in Tulane currently. One is project managing the restoration of the west facade of the U.S. Capitol. The others are working on historic theaters in New York and throughout the country, actually. And the other is doing project management on the restoration of the National Museum of American Art. So, American History. So, the opportunities and the connections you make here will benefit you tremendously. And yes, to come out of this program and start restoring the U.S. Capitol, not a small thing. It's a big thing.
We also have the lawyer for the National Trust is one of our graduates. We have graduates in positions in state historic preservation offices throughout the country, all across the country, actually. A lot of people going to work with the National Park Service and FEMA, doing disaster response work. A lot of people work for private firms, large historic tax credit companies. There's one with offices throughout the country. Some are big, one office is here. We have 2 of our graduates leading that branch. So we are spread out, like really all over the world. Our students end up going. Gene Sizik, who started the program in the 90s, he still keeps in touch with everyone. Like they are scattered to the 4 winds. Like you can find graduates of our program all over the place. And we are really tight-knit alumni community. I graduated from the program, so like the people that I went to school with are some of my best friends now. The people that are not my best friends are the people that like help me navigate my career. Like even if you're not end up being like good friendships with them, everyone that I've met throughout all of my years associated with the program have been really helpful in networking and cross-sharing and just like helping one another. A very helpful bunch, I think. You guys agree with that?
Yeah, I would say like whenever you have someone come in and like guest speak, they're like, oh, they went to the program and they have a whole backstory with Heather. That's she covers.
Why did you choose the program? Okay.
For me, I had been out of school for 8 years, so I was nervous about coming back, but I went to a few open houses in Tulane, just constantly every time I went, it felt more clear to me that this is the place I needed to be or wanted to be. And then obviously not being in school for 8 years, I was super nervous. I'm still adjusting, but every staff and my classmates, they've all made this like 100%. When people ask me, are you happy? I'm like, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. It's very welcoming. I was very intimidated. I was really nervous, but it really has almost felt like, it's gonna sound like Hallmarky, but it does. It feels like a family, which was really important to me. So I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, and I would say what he didn't mention is that he had a background in preservation before this. He did that for a while.
I did that at college also. So I did know that this is what I wanted to do. I took a minute, checked the avenues of like routes that I could do without grad school, and I found that it was pretty like limited, at least for me. So, and then this is also just like, I miss school, and being in class is just where I feel really like at home, which I never thought I'd say 8 years ago, but here I am.
Yeah, and I would say one of the cooler things when mentioned that it is kind of like a family, at least our class definitely is. There are so many different backgrounds. We have people with architectural backgrounds, we have people with interior design degrees, we have people then on the flip side, like myself, who I was an economics major, and then I worked in New York in the entertainment industry for 5 years and then decided to 180 and come do this. I would say I was aware that there was kind of like Mark mentioned that this industry has a huge future. I think there's a vacuum forming for individuals who care about it and who want to keep it going and learn the skill set that you need. So that's why I chose the program. And I also love New Orleans. I mean, that was kind of a no-brainer. But as far as why I wanted to do it, I think it's such an exciting field, and it's probably a bit overwhelming, like seeing all of the different avenues. Like you probably don't know what a lot of those things are. I didn't. But we've had so much exposure, and I feel like the faculty is kind of like, in a way, like a key to the city, because you're kind of meeting so many different people and you're learning so many different skill sets, and it's just an entirely new paradigm that this program and I think this industry opens up once you start learning about it.
Yeah, we've gotten to do some really cool stuff, and we've only been in school for like
We're 2 months in, we're in week 7.
almost, yeah, it was 2 months or about 2 months, and we've gotten to go to the top of Jackson with St. Louis Cathedral. We got to go and do stuff that a lot of people don't get to do, and that's just one tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, and so we're in this building a lot of the time, and there's a studio upstairs that we share with the architecture students, and the real estate students aren't here as much, but and so we're all kind of spread out in this big studio environment, and we're all working on things like hand drawing, CAD, et cetera. So it's quite, it's a lot, but Michael, just reading it.
Mark, question from the audience is, I was wondering if you could speak to how Tulane has promoted diversity in the content of the program and instilling that as a value of the field.
So it's a good question. Our student body is very diverse. But our professors are increasingly more so. I think the question speaks to how the field has evolved insofar as we restore the US Capitol, but we also restore ruins of slave quarters that were lost, of plantations that have been burnt. We look at the broad range of what constitutes a diverse American past, and we engage with communities in finding ways to make that relevant and beneficial to their present and future. So it is actually, I think, essential and a crucial part of the study and the program in general.
Does anyone else have a question?
I guess I'm kind of curious about how demanding a dual degree decision would be, because this program is like this is it for me. I love this program, but I'm also quite curious about the real estate hand of it. There's so many other avenues of it. I mean, what does that workload look like if you really do?
So the dual degrees usually go longer than the 2 years. Michael could speak better about this. But you would apply separately to both programs, be accepted, and then your courses are staggered, so you meet all core requirements for each. And I think your electives are like transferable between the two. Is that?
You're talking about the architecture and preservation?
Yes.
Yes, so actually it's one application. And do you have an architecture background?
No.
If you did have an architecture background and to take courses and study, you would apply for the 2-year MArch 2-year and an MSHP program. And if you did an MArch 3 with MSHP, the way it starts is that you would take a year of the architecture courses first, and then in your second year, we would weave in the preservation courses, and all your electives for the architecture program become the preservation program classes. And then in addition, you have an additional year that you would stay on to finish your preservation study.
Thank you.
We do have some students that are, and in my opinion, I mean, I don't know them as well because we don't have every class together, but their architecture background that they've had while doing that program and now they're doing the historic preservation program, they're excelling. When you say they're like in studio, especially, like they've kind of got like a leg up on us. But I'm in the same boat as you. I almost did the dual degree. What my deciding factor was, I'm more about historic preservation and I love architecture, but in historic preservation, I'm still getting to learn like studio with Mark, and it all kind of is intertwined together. So don't let it.
I guess I asked that, wondering if that would support a potential private practice in the future. I'm currently a blacksmith apprentice, and it's really heavy work. It's beautiful work, but it's heavy work, and I don't see myself physically doing it forever, but it is extremely valuable knowledge, just in terms of who I study under. And that is something that I would love to pass along from a place of a consultant almost. And I'm just curious how deep the curriculum goes into what a private practice is,
So it's a very good question. Architecture is a licensed field, and you have to have a certain number of years of training and a certain number of years of practice, and it's a ratio to get the license. Historic preservation is not. You can be a full practicing conservator, architectural conservator, that's my title, or work within the field solely with the degree. If you want a license, then you have to go through the architecture program and complete all the requirements. That being said, there are very few architects who specialize in historic preservation. There are firms that do this, but very few of them actually include a complete overlap because they're seen in some ways as kind of specialized in different. I think it's really beneficial to have the dual degree, but it's not exclusively necessary.
So like I have a private practice consulting firm, and the Tomb project is through my company. So I'm able to take on projects like the Tomb. She's actually going to work on one of my projects. I didn't know that until I met her in the lobby. So yeah, so you're able, like if you go into private practice consulting, you can integrate all of the things you're interested in. I'm not trained as an architect. I'm not an architect, but I am a preservation heritage consultant. So there are a lot of things you can do with that aside from like having the architectural license.
And typically we'll partner with architecture firms or architects who can do the filings and new design while we work on the historic preservation one. And sometimes they're the lead, usually they are, but not always. Sometimes we're the lead, it just depends. And then of course there's the implementation. If you actually have craft knowledge, and you do, that's a huge bonus for our field, which is increasingly lacking in people with that kind of hands-on experience. And so to be able to understand how blacksmithing, of course, which is very specialized, but how things are built means you can better understand how they're deteriorating and better specify how they're to be fixed. And that is the focus of what we're teaching here, is how to understand the methodologies and materials so you can understand how to do it right and restore them correctly.
I think your question was the workload, right? That's your initial question, right?
Yeah, but I don't I feel like this might be enough. This might be enough. Yeah.
And like, I waved to Tomas when he was leaving the building, so he went through our program. And then he decided, hey, I graduated this program, I actually do want to go back for an architecture degree. So now he's in the architecture degree program. So he did it like kind of the reverse way. So he's pursuing the Master's of Architecture right now after already having completed our program. Because he fell in love with the field in a larger scope. He just decided to stay with us. So people do sometimes do that as well. They don't do the dual degree, they like choose later on to come back for the other.
Now, do you ever see students pick up another degree during the course of?
People pick up our degree, so we'll have architecture students sometimes taking our courses as an elective, and they're like, hey, I want to get a dual degree in preservation. So that happens fairly often, actually. So that does occur.
We have, I think, 3 that are doing both. in our program. What do you guys do?
We're about CPAs. Oh, nice. Which actually leads into my next question. One of the application requirements is a portfolio. Could you please expand on what that entails? Because I don't really see myself as having a portfolio.
I can answer that question.
Okay.
The portfolio requirement is really, we like to see a writing sample if you have anything. It's writing, graphic, or research. So anything that can just show that, you know, you have that ability.
Okay.
That's what I turned in.
I was really nervous about it too.
What did you?
I had a bunch of like old work that I had done, and I wrote the paper, the essay, obviously, and then made sure I spell checked everything. Okay.
They resubmitted my senior thesis from undergrad
Okay.
about Moorish Spain, and that was it.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you didn't study it, I think Michael, you told me like just a comparable,
Yes.
yeah.
Any type of, anything that can show your writing.
We really welcome diverse backgrounds. Like, we do not want everyone to come from architecture school, and we don't want everyone to come from a preservation background. I think for us, it's really important to have a wide range of backgrounds. It really helps the cohort gather skills that we don't even teach in the program, like they can learn from each other. So don't think that you need like a visual portfolio. Writing samples are fine.
I would say we have a large and interesting and diverse class, and there is only one sort of thing they all have, which is curiosity. People are eager to learn and to want to know, recognize what they don't know and want to find out about it. And that's really all that's necessary. That and the ability to write. You have to write. So anything you can provide that shows you can put a sentence together will help. So, and everyone knows that I hammer that. So
Could the writing sample be a new document, or okay?
Yes, see a new document. So one of our first years, she didn't have any recent writing samples, so I talked to her before she applied, and she ended up writing something, a newer document.
and you can include examples of your blacksmith work.
Yeah, photos of that would be really cool. Maybe the design process.
Oh,
In fact, if you can tool out the wording of your article in iron, that would be useful.
Oh my gosh, my least favorite thing to do. Chisel lines and.
Can we come visit you?
Absolutely.
That's
all
awesome.
the time,
Because
right?
if she's working in the cemetery, then, well, we're gonna meet Daryl later in the semester, so we will probably see you there.
Definitely, definitely. Always, anyone is more than welcome. I love to nerd out, give them a grand tour. Sorry, dusty shop.
Oh, and I can vouch for the merit aid scholarships, like they help a lot, and I mean, I don't wanna like put my foot in my mouth, but they're pretty open to anybody
Yeah.
getting.
All applicants are automatically reviewed for merit scholarships, and they can range from 25% to 75% of the tuition. So apply, and we can look at it. But with that, I think we'll go ahead and end the webinar here. So thank you all for attending, and we hope you'll have a great night. Bye.
Thank you so much.